The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. It is Sunday, September the 14th, and we are back with another week of the best in hard rock and heavy metal news and music here on the Hard Rock Empire. Tonight we're going to be talking about the music of August the 22nd. So looking forward to that. Some really good music this week. A very, very loaded week in music, and really more music than we could possibly even get to in an hour-long program. But some really good stuff we'll talk about. Of course, we'll have our news headlines. We'll have our question of the week. We have all kinds of stuff to talk about that'll be coming up on the podcast today. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Thankfully, a lot of music this week compared to the last couple weeks where we only maybe had like 50 new releases each week. We had over 70 this week, and about half of it I thought warranted further listening. So that's definitely more than usual, and I still have stuff to get around to. But what I've listened to so far, a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah, it was a really good week. We are attempting to connect with Chris. Unfortunately, our connection is not working out at the moment, so we're still kind of in the process. We're hoping to have Chris on with us. It says he's connecting in the Call Me on Roadcaster, but then it doesn't seem to connect and go through. So we'll hopefully have Chris on the line at some point during this podcast to join us to give his thoughts as well. But you know, this is a week where there was just a lot of really good music, so I'm excited to get to talk about that coming up in our second segment. We'll get to some news headlines first, but first, before I do that, a big thanks to everybody who helped us get to the affiliate level on Twitch. We did finally reach that after last week's program, so we're very grateful for that. Chris, certainly a big part in that, helping us get the people here to be able to do that. So a huge thanks to Chris and all of his friends and our friends as well who were able to jump on board to help us get to that point. And you may see an ad here or there now that we actually have ads loaded. Hopefully it won't be too intrusive. We'll kind of try to figure out a way to work around that as we go and continue to try to get this all sorted out. It's going to be some new territory for us because we've got some new toys to kind of mess with. So bear with us, including our ability to get Chris to dial right into our box. But we'll hopefully get that figured out as we go. But yeah, the other thing too, of course, we have a Discord. We'll post the link to that in both of the chats. Join our Discord. That's where you can learn about our stream schedule. That's, of course, where you can answer our questions of the week, and you can let us know what your thoughts are on that. So make sure you join the Discord and let us know what your thoughts are, especially when we get to these questions of the week. Because to me, it's nice that we get more than just our opinions when we do this. But now we have Andre Chase calling in, so we'll see if Chris actually is able to connect.
Chase you.
Chris, are you there? Not there as of yet, so not sure what's going on with that. We had really good luck the first time we did it, but it just says connecting, so
weird.
We'll try to get it figured out. Could be an internet connection somewhere here and there, but we'll do our best to try to get it sorted out. But in the meantime, while we're trying to get that sorted out kind of on the fly here, a couple of news headlines, and this one is probably one we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. I know we'll have it again next week as well. And Mike, you alluded to this last week when we had our podcast that there were going to be more announcements from Sonic Temple. Obviously, they are just getting started and announcing their bands for 2026 very early in the process. So each week or so, they're going to release a group of bands. And it seems, at least to this point, they're trying to group bands together that have some sort of common theme, whether they'll all be on the same stage, whether they'll be spread out over different stages. We don't know any of that stuff yet. And we also don't know, who the headlining acts of these types of bands will be. So with all that said, Sonic Temple has announced another a group of bands. And while I try to get Chris connected, Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about the bands they've announced?
Yeah, based on what I've seen so far, I don't know if there are any headliners yet. I think we might see potentially one this coming Monday, if the leaks that may or may not have happened hold true. But this past Monday, The announcement actually was pertaining to metalcore bands. The week before, we had a list of deathcore bands, including Lorna Shore, Paleface Swiss, Attila, Chelsea Grin, Brand of Sacrifice, and Disembodied Tyrant. This past week, the metalcore announcement came with bands like Electric Callboy, We Came as Romans, The Plot and You, Make Them Suffer, Bloody Wood, and Conquer Divide being announced. I'm certainly more into metalcore than I am grindcore or deathcore, so that was certainly, I guess, a step in the right direction. I think it'd be cool to see a band like Bloody Wood live. I've not really listened to Electric Callboy, but I know they've gotten really popular as of late. We Came as Romans had a new album just recently, and what I've heard of it wasn't bad. But yeah, so we got that so far. We have now deathcore and metalcore announced. They have teased the next announcement, which will happen tomorrow. All signs point to it being a list of emo bands, just based on the ad, suggesting it wasn't just a phase, alluding to everyone having kind of an emo phase. There was an advertisement that popped up on Instagram this past week that referenced a list of bands that definitely aren't part of the deathcore or metalcore announcement. Those bands include The Used, Story of the Year, Atreyu, Bless the Fall, and Alisana. Definitely points to the validity of the leak, given we know we're getting emo bands. I could see potentially The Used making it to the main stage. Same with possibly Atreyu. I don't know if we're still talking big end of the night headliners, but definitely some noteworthy bands there. And I guess I'm kind of curious what's going to happen as far as when are they really going to announce the cleanup hitter bands, essentially, the ones that are really going to move tickets. But interestingly enough, too, I don't know if this is going to hold true when Atreyu is going to be announced, but just the other day, they blacked out their Instagram account, and their bio just says RIP. So I don't know if Atreyu might be having some issues and might be going away, or if they're just promoting something new that's on the horizon. It's worth noting that September 18th will mark the 10-year anniversary of their 6th studio album, Long Live, so maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, I kind of like this weekly slate of bands being announced. I'll be curious to see what comes after next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's one of those things that I like the fact that they clearly have some gimmicks going on. They're trying to kind of figure out, what these new. We obviously have another new stage, so there's going to be a lot more new content. And I think, being able to kind of trickle it out a little bit at a time, allows for different sectors of fans to get excited a little bit at a time. It's like, this announcement might not be for you, but maybe some of the emo bands are going to be more, or there's going to be some other announcement. We, again, go back and listen to our episode where we reviewed Sonic Temple, because we kind of talked about some of the bands we would like to see potentially, joining. It's just a matter of whether Sonic Temple will find a stage for those bands, because there's a lot of different bands that we think would make very logical additions to this festival.
It is kind of interesting when you think of last year when they employed kind of the one band every day announcement method. I'm just curious, like, how the data differs from one way of making the announcements to the other. Like, what are they getting from doing them in kind of small bulk announcements compared to just one at a time? I'd love to kind of see what goes into that from a data standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see. And I guess, that is an interesting thought process that you have there, that maybe when they start assigning stages, some of that may be just based on what the
buzz is.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like, if one announcement doesn't really get a big push, well, now you're on stage 5. Like, if people are really stoked about it, maybe that's going to be stage 1 or stage 2. So we'll see. It's I like the idea of kind of grouping these together, and it'll be interesting to see, what the response is, like you said, and what other groups we're going to have going forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. Again, we're going to have another announcement this week. Mike's already kind of hinted at what it's going to be, or what we believe it to be. But we'll talk about it again next week. And if they tease something else, we'll kind of bring that up as well. So interesting stuff for sure. The other story that I thought was kind of noteworthy, I mean, it's not a band we talk about a lot on here, but to me, it's a band that is another one of those kind of pioneer bands in the music industry, in the rock and more classic rock era. But The Who is wrapping up their farewell tour in North America, and it has been announced that their final U.S. date will be in Greater Palm Springs on Wednesday, October the 1st. In addition to that, which I thought was interesting, The Offspring will be joining The Who in L.A. at the Hollywood Bowl coming up next Friday. That's a really cool show for sure. Tickets are available. You can click on the link if you're in the area and want to try to get tickets to this. My guess is they will go very fast, being the chance of this being their last show. And again, we talk about it a lot. Last shows are question mark because you never know. But these guys have been doing this a long time. So when they tell you it's probably going to be the last show, it's probably going to be the last show here in North America. But, what an iconic group that is admittedly a group that I probably need to go back and give a deeper push into their catalog.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And it's funny, I saw a comment on one of the YouTube videos I was watching talking about how, or it might have been on the story, someone mentioned that, this will be 24 years since the last time they had their final tour in retirement. But every next time they say it's the final one is more likely to really be the final one. And you have both these guys, I think they're both in their 80s at this point. It's going to end sooner or later. And, you just saw what you saw with Ozzy, and you just think, man, it must be so difficult to walk away from that. Like, I watched a couple of videos from some of their live performances in 2025, and both Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey sound great for their age, for sure. Obviously, they're the only two real members at this point. John Entwistle passed away in 2002, and Keith Moon, obviously, in 1978. It was kind of wild watching some of their videos because for a while there, they had Zach Starkey playing drums for them, who is the son of Ringo Starr.
Oh, crazy.
Apparently, that it ended up not working out too well. They had some sort of issue that like, his drums were too loud on one of the performances, and that bothered Daltrey, I think, and they eventually worked it out, but I think that relationship eventually soured, so he's no longer drumming for them. But they also have Simon Townsend, who's Pete's brother, playing guitar for them, so that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah, definitely a band that I like all of their hits, but I've never really sat down and listened to any of their albums in their entirety, and I probably should.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a band that I need to dig into more, and like you said, their hit songs are iconic, and you think about the longevity they've had, and like you said, obviously, they have as much of an original lineup as you can have at this point. But, again, another one of these bands that really pioneered that sound that would carry through the 70s and even into the 80s. And, you have to think, like you said, that just considering the circumstances, that if this isn't their last show, it's got to be one of their last shows here in North America. But, you'd said, based on some of the videos you saw, they still sound really good after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think maybe we don't think about them a whole lot, but they're just as big as any of those classic rock bands. I mean, you think here in Southwest Ohio, just they kind of have a urban legend kind of built in as far as what happened in Cincinnati in one of their shows. Like, it's just, that was the fervor of trying to see the Who back then. And they were legends.
Yeah, 1979, the tragedy at the old Riverfront Coliseum. I say that building is actually still there.
That could be a tragedy.
But it changed the laws on festival seating in Cincinnati for a long time. And still a lot of places that will not allow festival seating, which is basically first come, first serve. You get a ticket, just get in the door, and then it's a race down. Well, that night they didn't open enough gates, and people got trampled. And if you've ever seen the show WKRP in Cincinnati, they did a whole episode basically as a tribute to those who passed in that tragedy. And unfortunately, that was kind of what this band was known for in the area for a while. So, just kind of sad that was tied to them, when in reality, at least as far as I know, they had nothing to do with the tragedy. It just happened that they were playing that night, and that's just kind of how it worked out. So, Legendary band. Certainly wish them the best in retirement. If you get a chance to go see one of those final dates, I honestly, that Hollywood Bowl show would be great. I love the Offspring. That would be a really fun show. And
I hear they sound really good still, too.
that's awesome to hear
I mean,
as
obviously
well.
not the Who's age, but still, they're getting up there.
They're not spring chickens anymore. So, yeah, definitely if you get a chance to see that show at the Hollywood Bowl, definitely good. If not, that Greater Palm Springs show on October the 1st will be the end of the line.
I did see recently that the Offspring did have the original guy from the Pretty Fly for a White Guy video. They had him on stage with them. Like,
oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, like who knew that dude was still out there somewhere? But yeah, he's like doing the dance and everything. Just classic.
That's hilarious. But another group I probably still need to see somewhere down the line. And now they're in the classic rock range. I'm sure I can probably see them at the Phrase Pavilion or something, or whatever it's called now in Dayton.
It'll forever be the Phrase Pavilion.
It will, for sure. But yeah, The Who. Certainly wish them the best. Amazing band with an amazing legacy. Reminder, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can check out previous episodes of our podcast. You can check out our store. We haven't hyped our store. That was probably a miss on my part during this whole push to affiliate, but we do have a store. And again, we are now an affiliate on Twitch, so you may occasionally see ads. If you have an Amazon Prime account and you're not using your Prime, you do get one free subscription to a channel. You have to renew it every month. It doesn't automatically renew, but if you want to throw a Prime down on there, we would appreciate that. If not, just stop by and join us. That's the best thing you can do to support our channel. We're very grateful to have people come by and listen to what we do. And what we do is music. And what we're going to be talking about is the music of August the 22nd. So it's time to get to the new music segment. And this was a doozy of a week. And that makes it really a fun week to go through the music. Of course, each and every week, Mike will go through and put together a playlist on YouTube that has all of or at least most of, the new albums accounted for a given date. That given date this time is August the 22nd. He goes through and pulls a track off of each of those albums. He'll go through and rate them, and then I go through them, and we'll take a look and try to come up with 2 new picks each. And again, it does bring up a point this is probably an off-the-air discussion, but it's one that we'll have to come to at some point as to whether we want to start basically pulling all the music for an entire month and then choose 2 new songs each week that are in that month, because no offense to the other bands we've picked over the previous weeks, because we really enjoyed those albums, but we could have made 8 picks at least out of this week and probably still had good music left on the table.
Yeah, and I think maybe, that idea was the first thing that came to my mind as far as, hey, let's open up the entire month for selections. I also think that there must be another way that we can promote the albums that we've enjoyed maybe off of the stream.
Yeah. Chris,
as well.
Chris, did you connect this time? Did it work?
I am in.
Holy
We're here.
You are here, you are loud, and we are live.
All right, awesome. Chris has joined us. Turns out all I needed to do was reset the password for the Roadcaster, and evidently that's what it took to work. So welcome aboard, Chris.
Now
Good to have you. So,
yeah, I've been listening the whole time, so I'm here.
So real quick before Mike finishes his thought, just any thoughts on The Who? Obviously they're wrapping it up. Just any thoughts you have before we move on to the new music again?
I'm much in the same way as you guys. I mean, obviously, I got into The Who much later. I wasn't there for, obviously when they were huge, but another band, much like Rush and a lot of these older bands that I've kind of had this old soul and gotten into, wish I could have seen live for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Again, kudos to them for a great career. But anyway, getting back to your thought, now we got Chris on board. But like you said, it was just a really loaded week in music.
Yeah, absolutely was. Just kind of a little insight into this week, and also kind of the way I go about selecting music and how I rank it. I have the spreadsheet where I log everything from Heavy Music Headquarters and Loudwire as far as their new music calendars go. I'll pull all the one track from every album and put it on a playlist, and then I'll go through and I'll listen, and there are kind of 3.5 different scores I can give it. I either color it red because I didn't like it, I'll color it orange because it's not bad, and then I'll highlight it yellow if I think it's really good, and even there, I'll then make it bold if it's something I know I definitely need to check out beyond that. So typically speaking, maybe about a third of the music ends up in that yellow category where, okay, these are potential picks. This week, out of 73 items on the playlist, 36 of them got that highlight. So that's nearly 50% of the new releases I thought warranted more of a listen and kind of reached that highest level. That's unheard of. That doesn't happen very often. So definitely a lot out there to listen to. Just kind of going over some of the important releases as far as major bands. We have Deftones with their newest album, Private Music. Iron Savior's been going back and reimagining some of their older tracks into newer albums, and they have the next one of that series, Reforged Machine World, that came out. 3 Days Grace has their new album, Alien Nation. If I remember right, I'm pretty sure they have both their original lead singer and their current lead singer on board, almost like a Halloween thing going on there. So that's probably pretty good. And we mentioned We Came as Romans being added to Sonic Temple recently. Their new album, All Is Beautiful Because We're Doomed, came out.
Yeah, there's some really outstanding stuff in there. I know there was one particular band that you wanted to call out that I haven't had a chance to listen to their whole album yet, but I did listen to the track on the playlist.
Oh, that's probably one of my favorite cover songs in a while. I also like to mention the bands that we've in the past picked for our music selections.
Yeah.
One of those, not the one you're referring to, but the other one, the band Myrath has a best of collection called Reflections that came out on the 22nd. And then there is Feuerschwanz, German folk metal band, amazing band just in general, but they have kind of an EP, I think. It might have been a full-length album now that I think back at it, but their album Nightclub came out, which to me, the most important thing off of that is their cover of the whatever viral is, whatever's beyond viral is how you would describe that. The song Gangnam Style from Psy that took over the universe, 10, 12 years ago? They covered that, and it is absolutely amazing. It's a song I didn't know I needed a metal version of, but now that we have one, I don't know why it took so long.
That was 12 years ago. July 15th, 2012 is when that song was released. And obviously for younger people who might not have realized what that was, I mean, that was K-pop going to a completely different level. And this song was everywhere, and you couldn't escape it. And even now, like it still occasionally pops up. And this cover was completely out of left field. Did not see this one coming. And it was relatively, as far as I can, I don't speak Korean, so I can't really speak to pronunciations, but they did as good a job as I could have possibly done speaking Korean with being another language. I thought they really did a great job. The video is fun. It has a few homages to the original video. And that's the other thing, too. If you haven't seen the original video, you should watch it, because there's some things that happen in the cover video that might seem like, oh, that's kind of weird or creepy. But it's like that was directly a reference to the original video, which I thought they absolutely knocked it out of the park.
That original video, up to 5.7 billion views.
If you haven't seen it, you are one of the few who have not seen that video. And you want to talk about trying to find that viral moment. You've got a catchy song. You've got a catchy video.
Goofy dance. That
goofy
the guy does
dance.
In the video.
Like, it checked all the boxes that you need to check to have something like that just go nuclear viral. And even to this day, like, it still pops up, and now we have a cover of it on the list. And
so if you ever wondered what a folk metal version of that sounded like, here's your opportunity.
For sure. And it's on the playlist, which I have linked in both the chats. So you can go in, you can watch that video when we're done. Please don't watch it now, but watch it when we're done. Good stuff. But this was a huge week in music. Way more stuff to pick than we really had space to pick. But it is time to get to our new music picks. So, Mike, why don't you get us started with your first pick of the week?
Yeah, so, I mentioned Feuerschwanz with their new album. I decided instead to opt for two other German metal bands for my picks. First of which being the second full-length album from a German power metal band. They are Reinforcer, and this album is Ice and Death.
Yeah, Germany's one of those countries that's always high up on our list, and I thought there was a really good contingent of German rock and metal and power metal that came out this week, and it was all really good stuff.
I do kind of wonder now, thinking about it, if some of these bands maybe pushed up the release of their album a week just to not compete with the Halloween album that came out on the 29th.
Great point. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that in some shape or form next week.
Just outstanding.
But I think that's a really good point to try to not try to get dwarfed by the new Halloween album.
So anyway, this band was founded in 2015 by Nicholas Stappert on lead guitar and Marvin Freder on bass. It appears Freder's no longer with the band, replaced this year by Fabian Rodriguez. They are rounded out by Tobias Schwarzer on guitar, Logan Lexi on vocals, and Lasse Schmiedel on drums. First, like I mentioned, so much good music this week. It was really hard to commit to 2 albums. Having artwork that stands out certainly helps, and this album has that very well covered. First track on the album has this bass drum intro thing that kind of feels like Motorhead. Not a bad way to start your album by any means. Before kicking into really high fantasy power metal. Everything on it sounds great, but the more you get into the tracks, it was kind of the drumming that stood out the most to me on the album. Just amazing. Any album that has me looking up Norse words and concepts, like in this case, the track Skogamor, a term that refers to a Norse outcast or man of the forest who is banished from their community. That's always cool, educational. Norse metal is never a bad thing either. It's the kind of album that makes you want to pick up a sword and fight something evil, and every now and then that's just what you need to hear. It's kind of like symphonic metal, or maybe I'm not always looking for that, but when I am, I definitely got to find it, and Reinforcer definitely fits the bill. As I was putting together the list of standout tracks, I kind of realized the album has no real drop-off. From track 1 to 9, it's just really solid. If I did have to pick standouts, I would go with Heir of the Bear, Skogamore, The Witch Mayor, The Piper, Five Brothers, and the track that we're going to listen to, Ice and Death, the title track.
Let's check these guys out now. This is Reinforcer with their new album, Ice and Death. This is the title track. It is track number 5 on this album. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I really enjoy what these guys are bringing, and like you said, definitely has that vibe to it that feels like you're going into some sort of battle, potentially with a medieval weapon. Chris, I know you didn't get a chance to check out all the music in advance, so this is kind of fun. We're going to just get your raw opinion after hearing a 30-second clip of a song. But does this make you want to pick up a sword and fight something?
This does. I want to ride into battle. This gets the thumbs up if I had to go like full Ebert on it. But I was kind of checking out some of the other album covers for some of their other releases, and it gives me kind of a Berserk vibe. Like if we're translating this into manga or anime, and yeah, I'm down. This, as far as symphonic or power metal goes, this is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're watching us on Twitch or YouTube, which is really the primary way to see our podcast at the moment, you can see that album cover. It is really outstanding stuff. But it's just these guys have figured that sound out and have really nailed it.
Yeah, they figured it out. They've nailed it, and it doesn't sound like all the other power metal bands. Like, you're not going to hear that and think they're ripping off Halloween,
right?
Or Gamma Ray or Ed Guy. It's kind of its own thing. It kind of sits somewhere between those bands and maybe like a Sabaton, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to be, and certainly don't be ripping off Halloween right before they release their new album. That'd be a good way to get your album lost. But these guys didn't do that. This is really great stuff. Definitely check out Reinforcer, Mike's first pick for this week. As always, you have 2 picks. Another really good band. Another one that easily could have been one of my picks this week. But tell me who you have for pick number 2.
Yeah, so Germany basically invented power metal. So not surprising that if I'm going with another power metal band, I am not leaving Germany. I am still right here in Germany. I believe this is the 10th full-length studio album from these guys. They've been around since 1994. The band is Mob Rules, and the album is Rise of the Ruler.
I thought maybe this was some sort of Dio tribute.
Got to be inspired, right?
At the very least, like obviously the Mob Rules, you can't not think of Heaven and Hell. That's very true. But even if they're not, it's a great name, and they've got a great sound.
Yeah, you can do worse than naming your band after a Dio Sabbath song title.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, these guys have been around since 94. Looks like the only original member is the vocalist, Klaus Dirks. Band is rounded out by Sven Ludke on guitars since 2004, Marcus Brinkman on bass since 2006, Jan Christian Hofbrot on keyboard since 2010, Florian Disbalis on guitar since 2019, and Sebastian Schmidt on drums since 2023. Despite this album having a track called Coast of Midgard, audibly it doesn't have that same Norse feeling to it like the Reinforcer album did. Like there's not that kind of tangentially close to Viking metal feel that Reinforcer had on its album. Feels like more standard power metal, which I'm a fan of. I think the big difference here is the vocals. You have a lot more harmony, group vocals, kind of what you'd expect from more standard power metal, something you would have at a Wacken festival where people are all singing the big sing-along choruses together. This is another band that should have been on my radar a lot sooner, given they've been around for 30 years. But this week in general has been a good reminder of how much great music is out there and has been out there that I just haven't had time or the
Just hasn't been put in front of your face.
Yeah, I just there was never that vehicle to put it in front of me. Anything I found back in the day was kind of by chance, but you have these guys, you have obviously Iron Savior's been around forever, Myrath, and like I mentioned, Mob Rules, and 10 albums into their career. The whole album's solid. Track 10 stands out for being very much different than the rest of the album, kind of this acoustic folk metal piece with Uli Perhonen providing backing vocals. Really cool and worth checking out, but like all the other ones, just check out the whole thing. Standout tracks include Exile, Future Loom, Trial and Trail of Fear, Nomadic Oasis, Coast of Midgard, On the Trail, and the track that we're going to listen to, Dawn of Second Sun.
Check these guys out. This is Mob Rules with their new album, Rise of the Ruler. This is the 4th track off of that album, Dawn of Second Sun. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Many years we've been sure when no one could ever know if we'll one day return. When the stars forsake their gods, we will meet by sunrise. Face up to the sky, see a temple shining once again.
Yeah, I think the theme for this week, because we've each kind of both picked 2 songs from the same genre, is both of the bands that you picked and both of the bands I picked, despite being in a similar genre, don't really sound the same.
Yeah.
Like they clearly are different ends of the spectrum, in your case power metal, in my case melodic metal, where that's always the danger with these genres in particular, is that the 2 things you get in trouble with are the whole album sounds the same. These guys don't. They have, as Mike mentioned, there's a track on here that sounds completely different than really everything else on here, but there's variety in there. And a lot of it starts to run together when you listen to, here's the 8th power metal album you've listened to this week. Like, both of the bands you picked, they have variety, they sound different, they're unique from some of the other things on the playlist, and the quality of their work just makes it stand out kind of on a different level than some of the other stuff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be so easy, and we see it probably more so with kind of the traditional metal stuff, where it's like so much of what you're doing is rooted in, we want to sound like bands from 1982. What do you do that separates yourself? And I think like with these 2 bands, you definitely hear it. You're not going to confuse Reinforcer with Mob Rules. They have a distinct sound, even if they're both categorically power metal.
Yeah, even if you could potentially see them touring together, like they're not going to sound the same. Once again, Chris, I'm putting you on the spot for your 30-second review. Maybe this is a feature. We should get this sponsored. Like, Chris's 30-second take. He listens
Brought to you by Slim Jim.
There we go. Like, we're, advertisers, hook us, reach out to us. But what are your thoughts there on Mob Rules?
We talk about this probably once a week, I feel like, but the fact that how has it taken so long to find bands like this?
Yeah.
And it's a testament looking into this band that, they've been around for nearly 30 years, started, doing small gigs and having these self-financed albums from what I can see. And they just pursued this career, did what they love to the point where they're supporting Scorpions, Overkill, and then they start getting guest features from people from Halloween and all these major power metal folks. So just really a testament. I'm glad we're finally running into these folks and getting to kind of shed some light on these bands that really deserve to have the light shed on them from all 30 years of work, like I mentioned. So it's great. I don't always get into power metal, as I mentioned a ton, but both picks from Mike this week were absolutely fantastic.
To kind of piggyback off of what you're saying here, and something else we've brought up on the podcast before, is it's always impressive to me that a lot of these bands who didn't necessarily hit it big. Now, they may have hit it big in Germany or they may have hit it big in Europe, but as far as worldwide attention, maybe didn't get quite to that level, or their music didn't necessarily line up to what was popular at the time. And yet they've persisted. They've continued to release albums. They're still doing it. To me, that is encouraging because it's clearly they're in it because they love to play music. And the fact that, they didn't become Metallica, they didn't become, worldwide famous, it didn't detract from their, message and their mission of just playing music that's a lot of fun and making a living out of it. So it's great to see them continuing to persist and play great music. So definitely worth checking out Mob Rules, Mike's second pick for this week. As always, I have two picks as well, and we are starting off in Sweden, another one of our favorite countries on this podcast. I guess the word of these two bands to tie these together, in addition to being melodic rock, is supergroup, because they are both termed supergroups as you look it up. This is a Swedish melodic rock supergroup. Their third album, this is Crowne with Wonderland. This is, both of these picks, again, I would deem melodic rock, but again, not exactly the same type of melodic rock, and I think that's what kind of makes them interesting. At the helm is Alex Strandell. He has done vocals for Art Nation, Lionville, and Nitrate. Lionville, obviously somebody we featured on this podcast. They had a really great album, I think, the end of last year. You have Love Magnuson of Dynasty on guitars. You have the keyboardist of Heat, Jonah T, joining them. You also have John Levin, the legendary bassist of Europe, joining them on this album. And then you have Christian Lundquist, formerly of the Poodles, who is playing drums. This was just, of the Frontiers releases, and there were some great ones this week, I really thought this stood out, mainly because it is on the harder end of melodic rock. This is definitely maybe a little bit more toward power metal than some of the other melodic rock releases. The other pick I have I think feels a little more like classic rock. But I really enjoyed this album. I think it's one of the stronger ones I've picked in 2025. And again, when you see that level of talent and musicianship on this album, you can see why. But it's polished as you typically get with Frontiers. No big surprise there. The vocals are outstanding. The music is great behind it. It's just a really excellent release, and I definitely encourage you, if you're a fan of that type of music, to check it out. Standout tracks, if I have to pick four, it's Wonderland, Heaven Tonight, Timing Is Right, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Waiting For You. Let's check these guys out now. This is Crowne with their new album, Wonderland. This is the second song off of that album, Waiting For You. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
And I know that seeing equals believing, but I'm always dreaming of the angel high in the sky above. Oh, waiting for you. Wipe the tears out of your eyes. Living the best time of my life. Oh,
Yeah, really enjoyed this album. Thought that was really good. Great keyboards in there as well. Mike, I know you had the chance to listen to both of my picks front to back this week, and I know you were a big fan of these guys as well. Your thoughts on Crowne?
Yeah, I got to listen to quite a lot of the music this week, more than usual as far as listening to albums front to back. And yeah, this was amazing. I'm blown away kind of by the vocals. Alexander Strandel's a heck of a singer, and you see just the bands he's worked with up to now. Like, he just seems like one of those dudes that's going to pop up as the next lead singer of some aging classic rock band that's just going to blow people's minds. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a lot with Frontiers. They have a formula. They bring these younger or maybe less known lead singers in and pair them with groups.
32 years old.
Yeah, so I mean, still very much. I mean, to me, that's young now.
Absolutely.
But just really impressed with his range. I mean, we heard it on the Lionville release last year. That one comes up on my YouTube music when I'm driving around, and I still really love that album. But this is another great one. And again, his vocals, the music behind it really kind of brings it all together. Chris, time for your 30-second review of Crowne. What are your thoughts?
When it comes to melodic rock, I mean, you kind of expect that just over-the-top vocals, but even still, you always have those folks that kind of break the mold even in that realm. And as Mike mentioned, I think Alexander Strandell definitely goes above and beyond there, and it's kind of makes me feel bad knowing he's as old as I am, and I certainly cannot sing nearly as well as that.
I guess
really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the vocals, and also just going back to these bands that folks may not have heard. I mean, you not only that, but then you get to kind of go down the tree and see how these bands branch out from each other, because now you can go look at Heat for Jonah T or Dynasty. I mean, I hope everybody's heard of Europe over here in the States, but even still, you can check out some of these bands that they came from and see how they became renowned.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess I'm glad I said that 32 was still young when it's Chris's age. I'm going to offend him. We got him connected, and it's like, you're old. Like,
I didn't know Europe had that many albums, to be totally honest.
I didn't either. That's another band that I probably honestly have not done a good enough job actually listening to their catalog of music. Yeah. So really enjoyed this. It was really good. Definitely worth checking these guys out. Crowne, my first pick for this week. If you like one super group and you like two German bands, how about another one? So we're gonna take you back to Germany, but this actually is a super group put together by German multi-instrumentalist Markus Pfeffer. This is Barnabas Sky with Over the Horizon. I'll start off by saying I'm honestly shocked, especially with the talent on this album, that it does not have more plays on YouTube Music. The main track has a lot of plays, but a lot of the individual tracks are in the hundreds, which is really surprising. You take a look at what Pfeffer has done. He's played with Lazarus Dream, Mystery Moon, Winterland. He's, of course, from Germany. Look at the list on this one, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast, the lead singer of Taiketo, Danny Vaughn, it provides the vocals, and he's obviously really great. You've also got David Cagle of Silent Tiger, Dirk Kennedy of Hitman, Tony Harnell of TNT. We also have Heartline keyboardist Joris Gilbod, joining as well. Lee Small from Lionheart and The Sweet they compared it to his song Lone Wolf, kind of an old Queensryche song. Connie Land coming in with the song Amaze Me. You also had Davis Artigas from Pre-Incarnation from Venezuela, an up-and-coming Venezuelan vocalist who had a song on this album as well. It's so good, and there's so much talent. And again, because you have all these different vocalists, the whole album sounds different one track to the next. It doesn't sound like the same song over and over again, which I think is one of the things that as we run into these multi-instrumentalists, that can be a danger of that, because they're playing every instrument. They're playing everything. In some cases, they're singing. So you can run the risk of stuff sounding very similar, and it's hard to blame somebody when you're putting all that together. This album does not feel that way. But like I said, this one feels more classic rockish, occasionally hard rock, but it definitely has something that's a little more classic rock feeling. But again, really good. Pfeffer's really talented. The music's really talented. Really good, and the singers obviously are outstanding as well. Standout tracks include Over the Horizon, Fire Falls, Platform of a Star, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is The Sign of the Wolf. So let's check this out now. It is the new release from Barnabas Sky, Over the Horizon. As we mentioned, Danny Vaughn from Taiketo providing the vocals on The Sign of the Wolf. It's the opening track off of this album. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
The tide is high with heavy weather. The winds of war blow all together. The lightning lights the night before the fall. Sailing ships that bear the raiders, symbol of the grim invaders. The horn is blown, the gods will heed the call to the sign of the
Yeah, I mean, again, just really good stuff. And, the multi-instrumentalist type albums are always interesting to me because it's just an incredible amount of musicianship that goes into that. But overall, thought it was a really great release. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, this was one of the first albums I listened to for the week, and I was blown away by it. First off, Barnabas Sky sounds like he should be the villain in a Gundam anime.
Yes.
But yeah, I remember thinking Book of Faces was really good. So was Platform of a Star. Sirocco Sands, the last track, was really amazing. But yeah, it's funny listening to that clip because it's just like, even though you have this kind of ensemble cast with famous lead singer, it's like every now and then, like Marcus has to throw in this like guitar riff to remind you the guitar's there too, which sounds really cool, but it's kind of funny, like, hey, I'm still the main character kind of thing. But yeah, really great album.
Yeah, really enjoyed this. Thought it was really outstanding. And again, just a great variety of this album. I definitely encourage you to check out more tracks because not every track's going to sound like that first one. Chris, let's get your 30-second thoughts on Barnabas Sky.
It was a good sign when I looked these guys up that it was not just labeled as a supergroup, but an all-star project. No, I enjoyed that. I kind of want to leave out my final proclamation on this just because I feel like you do play with fire a little bit having that many vocalists. So I definitely want to hear more of the album before I make any kind of final decision. I mean, what I've heard so far is great. You guys have both given it your seal of approval, but I feel like, at least as far as I go, I could feel a little bit of whiplash depending on the number of folks you have coming in and varying the kind of overall sound of the album. But no, I enjoyed that song. I just like to give it a little bit more of a listen.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, hey, that's what they're out to do. Then they've done their job.
Yeah, for sure. If it makes somebody pick up the whole album, I totally agree with that. And I think that's the other side to it, too, is balancing that out, that it's not too much of a drastic switch, that it kind of does tie together, and at least in my opinion, I do feel like it is a very cohesive album, even with the different singers. But we encourage you to check it out. Obviously, pick up the album Barnabas Sky. It is out as of August the 22nd. And as we talk about, since we talked about how much good music there is, just a reminder, if you can, support these groups, buy the albums, see them on tour, listen to their music. Even if you're just streaming it, they're getting something out of that. But obviously, if you can buy merch, things like that, do support them. I know Mike posted a picture, I think it was one of the first bands that you spotlighted this week, had a really cool vinyl release this week.
Yeah, the Reinforcer album just had this really awesome looking blue vinyl. And I get that's kind of the gimmick of why how you sucker people into buying more vinyl, I suppose, is having these custom colored pressings. But it works because I look at that and I think, 25 euros. I can buy that. Why not? Like, it's so easy to fall for that, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But I mean, if you're already getting the digital files, like, why not get this really cool vinyl that has really awesome cover art as well? It's tough to pass up.
It does make me wonder sometimes if vinyl the first time around would have lasted longer if they really would have had the technology to do these crazy albums. I know they had some, but not to the degree they do now, that it's just literally any design in the world you want, they can make an album out of it. So I would think it would have been even more appealing to people, possibly.
It kind of seems like when they had those iMacs that came out in the late 90s that were like the neon color bodies, like it's kind of like that, only with vinyl records.
Yeah, I mean, why not? If it's moving records, then it makes sense. And a lot of good music that you can buy on vinyl or digital release or wherever you want to get it. CDs, still a thing. You can pick those up as well. But that's our new
Power
music.
metal album covers just lend themselves to merch.
Yeah.
So, like, easily as well. Talking about the vinyls as well, I was kind of looking at the merch for Crowne, and they also, I think they had a bright purple vinyl as well on their website.
Nice.
Or, well, I should say Frontier's website, but
Same difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But no,
just
you're totally right.
yeah, that's to me that is a great way. And like you said, even just if you're going to display the vinyl album cover, and it makes your album art look just so much better when it's that big as opposed to something that's a little bit smaller. But yeah, really good stuff this week. It was a great week in music. It's time to get to the vault where Mike and I will each give you a classic album to check out. Mike started a very interesting gimmick last week, and it is hard to say where this gimmick is going to take him literally because it involves basically choosing a country by random each and every week and then trying to find metal bands to spotlight from that country. I feel like week one, you drew a pretty tough assignment. Week two, at least, I would think there may be a few more options there, but I mean, it have to be just because of the limited ones last week. But let's talk about where you're going for the vault this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So week one of the random country roulette thing I'm doing, I landed on Namibia, which had 4 bands listed on the Metal Archives. This week, my country fared a lot better. We're talking 375 entries on Metal Archives, which is probably even more than I would have imagined.
Yeah.
That being said, this week I am going to Israel. Kind of, it's wild because you don't really know what the music scene looks like over there. Not too surprisingly, there were a lot more entries in Israel compared to some of the other Middle Eastern countries, which you kind of expect because it's a little more similar to Western life, I suppose. Out of those 375 bands, 104 of them actually had the black metal label to them.
Oh, wow.
Which is interesting. I think there were over 140 death metal bands. And some of those share labels, so some of the black metal bands are also the death metal bands. 14 power metal bands and 51 thrash metal. So,
right.
It's kind of all over the subgenre spectrum. What I ended up going with was actually a symphonic metal band with their newest, it is their newest album, but that kind of ruins the reveal that I went all the way back to 2025 for my vault pick this week.
Yes.
2 months ago, even, we were in July. This was a band that actually was on my list, and I gave good score to the track I pulled for the playlist. I just didn't end up picking them. So we are moving on to them this week. The band is Scardust, and this is their album from July, Souls.
And this is a Frontiers band, right?
And it's a Frontiers band.
Of course it is.
Didn't realize that until I picked it, but it was kind of, when I found it, I was like, this is acceptable. Because, man, some of the stuff, like, no offense to these bands, but I'm probably less likely to listen to the entire band or to the entire album if it's in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about any other language for the most part. Like, that's kind of a barrier for me.
I feel like there are certain languages, like German, for example, when you think of a group like Rammstein, that like lend itself to, okay, I don't really need to know what they're saying. It works. Not every language is that way.
And Rammstein kind of lucked into it in a way because the original German language, Du Hast, got so big.
It did.
Like, if I'd listened to the English version of that first, I probably would have preferred it, but I didn't. So when I heard the English version, I was just like, it's just not the same. Like, there's just something about the the German that really hits you.
I mean, 99 Luftballons was the same way.
Yeah.
Like, the original version of that is so much better than the English version.
Absolutely. And you feel the same way about Japanese music as well. When you hear English versions of songs you first heard in Japanese, typically it's like, it's just not the same. Like, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, I was going to go with one band who actually weren't too bad. I didn't pick them, though. Their name is Cain and Abel 90210.
Yeah.
Their first album from 2010 was Cain and Abel's Bogus Journey.
Okay.
Which,
Kinda
would have been fun.
See what they're going for there.
Yeah, worth checking out. A little weird, but again, just kind of a barrier there, so I didn't go with them. Yeah, so these guys, they're a Frontiers band, like you mentioned, which I didn't realize until I started listening through the album. They started back in 2015. They feature Yoav Weinberg on drums, Noah Grumman on vocals, Aaron Friedland on keyboards, Gal Gabriel on guitars, and Bar Sasson on bass. Noah has outstanding vocals. You'll realize pretty quickly listening to this that that's kind of the main event. Album came out July 18th via Frontiers Records. On Frontiers' website, the band comments on the album saying, Souls is a deep personal journey for us, combining everything from intricate progressive elements to sweeping symphonic passages, anthemic choruses, and epic choirs. Thematically, we've explored ideas of memory, belonging, loss, and the desire for connection, weaving in influences from different musical worlds, including orchestral, Mediterranean, and even Celtic sounds. I've mentioned before that, and I even mentioned earlier in the episode, that I'm not always in the mood for symphonic metal, but this album's still really, really good, and whenever I am, I could definitely see going back to this. The album is progressive and diverse enough where even if you're not huge into the symphonic side, I think there's still going to be something here you're going to take from it that's interesting. The last few tracks on the album, Touch of Life 1, 2, and 3, are really cool. 1 and 3 features Ross Jennings from Hawken and Novena. Adds a cool male vocal to what they're already doing. Touch of Life 3 sounds like it should be part of some multi-track Dream Theater suite. Like when you hear it, the second it starts, you think, oh, this is part of any number of Dream Theater either 25-minute songs or like disc 2 of 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. But again, I enjoy that. The songs R.I.P. and Touch of Life 3 also have some harsh vocals, which I believe is actually their lead singer Noah doing, which is kind of wild. And I'm always a fan of those when they're used sparingly and within a mix of doing clean vocals and harmonies and whatnot. Standout tracks on the album include Long Forgotten Song, R.I.P., Dazzling Darkness, Unreachable, and all 3 parts of Touch of Life. If you're kind of looking for something symphonic, this isn't a bad place to go.
Yeah, I vaguely remember them being on the playlist when you brought their name up. I remember enjoying it. I'm guessing if it's a Frontiers band and I didn't pick them and you didn't pick them, it must have been a pretty good week in music because we've gone through some weeks over the last month that we were begging for a Frontiers act to have an album on there to pick. So I'd be curious, and I know you're looking it up as we speak, what we might have picked that given week that might have beat it out because, like I said, Frontiers band, that's usually, at the very least, gets serious consideration.
Oh, yeah, that week we had Ashes of Ares, which featured guitarists and bassists from Iced Earth. That was one of my picks. Phantom Spell, Heather and Hearth, which is a really cool prog rock album. You went with In Vertigo, Prevail EP, and Ramonda, The Walls Are Crumbling Down.
Yeah, those are both good, too. So,
but, yeah, there was a lot of really good stuff. That was also the week, I think, because we had a bunch of stuff from the Rocks record label, which was like the Christian metal label. And most of that stuff was solid as well. But, yeah, I mean, that could have easily been one of the picks, though, because Scars on Broadway also came out that week. But, yeah, just really cool, and I'm glad I stumbled into them and didn't have to go with Cain and Abel 90210.
For sure. You know, one thing I wondered I was going to bring up last week, but this feels kind of appropriate maybe this week, is I wonder if at some point we're going to run into bands that, you know, you have like the World Baseball Classic where you have people that will go back and play for Israel or they'll go back and play for, you know, these countries where Germany, where it's like, well, my great-great-grandma was, you know, 8% German, so I have the ability to go play. And it's not to suggest that these guys are not from Israel proper, but I wonder as you get more into more obscure countries, if you won't see a little bit of that where it's like, okay, well, they have one guy from this country and then three guys they brought in from somewhere else just to try to fill out the band.
Yeah, and you, in a way, and I don't know if this was actually how this worked, but you kind of felt like that about the band from Namibia.
Yeah.
Where it was just kind of like these guys have since moved on to England or Germany and the United States, but like you felt like they were really doing everything they could to try to build a metal scene in that country.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether they succeeded, it's hard to say, but you kind of feel like that was something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept for sure. I'm definitely interested to see kind of where you go from here.
I don't know. Should I pick the next country like on the show? Is that how we should do that?
I feel like to a point, like I do think you should get some grace if you look them up and it's a country that has no metal bands or there's a country that has, all the metal bands are terrible or something like that.
And we could at least do kind of a perspective. This is the next country.
Yeah.
If there's no way. I don't believe that's even possible. Let me check and see if they're listed. They are. There are 3 bands. 2 of them are apparently active.
Wow.
Yeah.
You going back to Africa?
Yes, I am. Home of quite possibly one of the greatest pro wrestlers ever.
Oh, Nigeria?
No.
Oh.
We are going to a land of diverse wildlife, stunning landscapes, and the mighty Nile River. Vibrant cultures, warm people, and delicious cuisine. We are headed to Uganda.
Uganda, yes. The home of Kamala.
Yes.
The Ugandan giant. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. And you've got 3 bands.
They sure do.
Well, that's interesting.
A progressive metal band. 2 of them are progressive. The 2 that are still active. That's interesting.
Odds are that's probably one of those 2 are going to get your selection if I had to guess. So
yeah. We'll see what happens.
yeah, that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. That'll be coming up next week. So if you want to know about Ugandan metal, tune in next week to the podcast. I'm not doing anything that exotic at the moment. I am going through Frontiers bands. So we're going to talk about another Frontiers band. But this was one I was excited. I got this on the randomizer for M, but I'm really happy to get this on the randomizer because I feel like this is another one of those bands that I know their hits. I've listened to some of their music over the years, but I really have not gotten deep into their catalog. So to me, this was a great opportunity to do just that. This is the 9th studio album from the legendary band Mr. Big. This is Defying Gravity. This album, unfortunately, the album is great. Start off with that. The album was released on July 7, 2017. Unfortunately, it does kind of have a sad story to it because this is the last album that Pat Torpey played on. Of course, he had Parkinson's disease. He really wasn't able to play a ton on this album. They brought in Matt Starr to do a lot of the drumming on this album. Torpey did have some drums and backing vocals, was listed as a drum producer on the album. Unfortunately, he would pass away in February of 2018. So this was the last album that had him on there. If you like Mr. Big, you should listen to this album. That is the one thing I can say is that all these years later, and they've since released a 10th album, they just have this classic sound. It's got rock. It's got a little funk to it. It's just a very eclectic sound that has really stood up over the test of time. Vocals are great. This doesn't sound dated in any way. This was just a lot of fun to listen to, and I need to continue to go through the Mr. Big catalog now that I've kind of started down this road, because obviously their hits are great, but there's a lot of other stuff out there that I really want to get into, and this album was really outstanding. Standout tracks include Open Your Eyes, Defying Gravity, Everybody Needs a Little Trouble, and Forever and Back. Mr. Big, what can you say? Just legends of the rock game. They're kind of winding it down now as well, but kind of one that I would have liked to have seen live, but just really great stuff from these guys.
I kind of feel like they're like a super group, but in reverse, where maybe they weren't when they got together initially, but when you look at their personnel right there toward up until the end, Eric Martin, Paul Gilbert, Billy Sheehan, just tremendous talents. They feel like the fact that they play together in a band is a bigger deal than just the band itself. It's kind of like a Winery Dogs thing where it's this is our big ensemble band, when in reality that was just their band.
Yeah. And obviously they were huge in Japan, still huge in Japan.
Greatest ending theme of all time, right? I mean, that was them.
Yes, it was Shine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really outstanding. It just like you said, the talent in this group is crazy, honestly. And of the people who were big in Japan, Paul Gilbert maybe the biggest of the group in Japan. Did a lot of stuff with Marty Friedman, Rock Fujiyama appearances. Which, if you don't know Rock Fujiyama, you should definitely go check it out on YouTube. They still do new content with Marty Friedman and Raleigh, I think is the other guy's name, the host. it's just really good stuff. There's some classic videos from the show from years ago that it's just them jamming out or trying to play certain songs, and the punishment games if they get it wrong, like, are just hilarious.
Like they would pick a letter and they'd have to play a riff from a band that starts with that letter.
Yeah.
Like, just really cool stuff. I do have to mention now that I'm like about a little over an hour into the Marty Friedman memoir. Dreaming Japanese. Man, like I don't read a lot of musician memoirs or really any memoirs of people, but he gets into some detail where you're just like, man, I don't know if I needed to know that, but that's cool. Just about his childhood and teenage years and kind of cool stuff about early bands he was in and kind of that process, but just definitely shared more than you'd expect from a dude like Marty Friedman who seems so introverted and just quiet. It's an interesting read.
It's one of those things, knowing Marty Friedman as well as we do. Obviously, we don't know Marty Friedman. That would be really cool if he come join the podcast. But, I feel like he's the type of guy that might feel like if he left some of the story out that he might not be doing a service to his fans. Like, hey, I've got to be extra detailed because that's what they're expecting. And so evidently it was. That's definitely one I want to check out. Really excited to do that. But anyway, Mr. Big, they're great. We're moving on to the letter N next week. I've not picked bands for that yet, but I'm excited to see what Frontiers will have for me next week as I turn the corner to the second half of the alphabet. It's time to get to our question of the week. Of course, that is the Power Trio. It's your hard rock hat trick. Chris suggested this question on the Discord. Reminder, join the Discord. You can suggest topics for the Power Trio. You can answer the Power Trio. Whatever you want to do. We want to know what your answer is. This was an interesting one, and I kind of took a suggestion from Chris and a suggestion from Mike, and I smashed them together into one suggestion. And basically what we ended up coming up with is 3 bands that had, at some point during their career, had a signature sound that you wish had been their sound throughout their entire career. The original thought from Chris was, bands that maybe started off with a signature sound, and then for whatever reason that sound changed, and you wish that it hadn't changed. This kind of gives a little more leeway, and it kind of opens up maybe more possibilities to bands who maybe you got into them at a certain time, and that was the sound that you really like, and you wish that would have been their whole catalog, or, whatever the case may be. But, just some interesting possibilities. I know you have some answers from Shane. That's where we'll start. Let us know what Shane had to say this week.
Yeah, Shane's answers are interesting because 2 of them are bands that I wasn't really sure what he meant when he suggested that their sound had changed and he liked a previous version of their sound. One is fairly obvious, and that's his first pick, Linkin Park.
Yeah.
And even he said, obviously, Chester can't come back. But, I think even with Chester, you could make an argument, at least I could, for my personal taste, that their sound on their first 2 albums to me is kind of where they peaked. Like if they just kept releasing Meteora over and over again, I think I would have been okay with that.
And they could be AC/DC, the modern version.
Absolutely.
But AC/DC made a ton of money, so who's to say that's not the right path? But
very true. Number 2, the band Hinder. I did see them live kind of back when they were at their peak early on in their career. Their debut album, Extreme Behavior, was huge with hits like Get Stoned, Lips of an Angel. I kind of gather that a lot of the issue with these guys, and he kind of alluded to this, was lead singer change. Austin John Winkler was their singer for a good portion of the time. He was replaced by Marshall Dutton. I've not listened to any of the stuff with him singing, so I can't really speak to that, but I could definitely see where that could maybe have you fall out of favor with the band.
Yeah, anytime you got a lead singer change, you may like the pre-sound, you may like the new singer, but there's going to be some feelings there.
The third one's the one that I really feel like I need to wrap my head around because it's a band that I've only casually followed. I think I have their first 3 albums, but the band's Disturbed. I did see on Wikipedia there was a critic that mentioned kind of after the sickness, their sound became kind of less nu metal per se, where that felt like the more nu metal album, and from Believe on, they felt more like hard rock. But I don't really think that was what his intention was with picking them. So I don't know if maybe sometime after 10,000 Fists, maybe their sound had diluted a bit. Maybe Disturbed, they started producing their own albums. Maybe there was a slight alteration to their sound there. I'd kind of be curious to know what, if anything, was noticeable. Maybe he just kind of lost interest in the band. I don't know.
Could be. I mean, I've had some bands that maybe didn't change their sound a whole lot, but there's just that one album or two albums that like really speak to you, and then really it could even be that just the songs weren't as good in your mind, and for whatever reason it just just didn't hold up the same way. So yeah, that's an interesting one because I'm other than like you said, maybe getting away from that new metal sound or getting into the new metal sound or however you want to look at it, maybe just didn't appeal to him as much. But interesting thoughts as always from Shane. Chris, you are live and in living color with us this week to give us your picks in the Power Trio. So what do you have for us this week?
Yeah, for my picks, hoping that some of these are surprises to other people like they were surprises for me. I started off with Sugar Ray. They actually opened up their career as a new metal band and had obviously have transitioned to pop. And while I'll listen to Sugar Ray and I do appreciate like most of their hit songs, I still would love to know what it would have been like if they would have stuck to those new metal roots and just stayed right there in that realm. Kind of in the same vein of that, my second pick was Kid Rock. I actually can kind of get into some of his early stuff when around that Woodstock '99 era where he was still making that new metal music, kind of that heavy hard rock, but now he really transitioned into the kid country, and it just I don't know, I just doesn't suit me. Would have loved to just keep that sound and ride along with Limp Bizkit, Korn, and the rest of them. And then last, kind of along the same vein as Shane, I actually mentioned Disturb in my notes here as well, but for me, it's Godsmack. One of my all-time favorite bands, but I do kind of have that same feeling. While I love their self-titled album all the way through Faceless, after that, and I don't know if it's just the band's getting older or trying to infuse some of that new pop to stay relevant, it just feels like they don't capture that same lightning in a bottle from the self-titled. Once you get past that Faceless album, it's just, I feel like it's transitioned more and more poppy, lighter, more acoustic, and yeah, it's just not for me, and it sucks just because of how much I love Godsmack. Side shout out to one that I just learned today. I didn't want to put them in my list because the band is Lit, and I don't necessarily listen to any Lit other than to hear their big song. But apparently they've gone country. So
really?
We've gone from My Own Worst Enemy to now they are a country band, and I looked into it, and yeah, once we hit kind of the mid 2010s, around 2015 or so, they started dropping new songs on CMT. So
wow,
yeah, and that's just absolutely wild to me.
I'm stunned. Honestly, that is stun lock the podcast. I had no idea that Lit was a country band. Now
that hurts.
No, I mean,
A Place in the Sun is a great album.
It's one thing to have, I mean, Kid Rock, he grew up in trailer parks and whatnot. It's not out of the realm of possibilities for him to go, oh, I just want to do country music now, but Lit?
And that makes me think of an honorable mention, which I don't think Mike's going to have on his list. So I think it's fair to say someone like Darius Rucker is another artist that obviously started off, he was obviously more mainstream rock, pop rock, and then went into the country scene. And I just wonder if some of this isn't an indictment of the rock music scene in the U.S. compared to the country music scene, and that these groups, in order to continue to be able to make money in 2025, or obviously in Rucker's case and Kid Rock, the transition was much older, but they just feel like the support chain is better to go the country route, that's where they're going to make their money now. And if they stay in rock, they're going to be playing Bogarts, and they're going to be playing these small venues that maybe they're just not seeing the return on investment at this point. I mean,
you see the same thing with Aaron Lewis as well.
Yeah,
going from Stain and kind of going the same route as Darius Rucker.
I mean, there's clearly, I mean, you have two choices. You can continue to play the music that you like, or the music that your fans like, or what made you what you are, or you can keep trying to make money. And maybe some of these guys are just chasing the almighty dollar and therefore are moving over to the countryside, even if it alienates a lot of their original fan base.
And then they become their own worst enemy.
Somebody had to tee that one up. So
that one bothers me, man, because I really loved A Place in the Sun, their 1999 album. I thought it was great for that style of music. That really hurts. But another one that kind of came to mind, and they weren't a band that I was super into, but I do feel like they abandoned kind of that sound I did enjoy. The band Incubus.
yeah, that's fair.
I think like Certain Shade of Green is a great song, and I don't even think they play that live anymore. Like they've walked so far away from that.
Interesting, for sure. Well, I'm interested to kind of know more about the country scene because I'm going to be going to Nashville in about 3 or 4 weeks. So we'll, potentially be able to get a little better idea of what that, maybe they'll find a bunch of rock bands down there when I get there. Who knows?
It does seem like a natural part of aging for some people where they just drift country, even just in their fandom. So I guess maybe that happens to artists too.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like something that probably should be, not that there's any music channels doing documentaries on music in 2025, but if you wanted to do one, just kind of the, how are these bands getting to that path? Because to me, it is kind of fascinating. I mean, it's not going to make me want to listen to them, but clearly there's some sort of logic behind why you veer that direction as opposed to just continue to do the song. Because
You hope it's not just a business decision.
and maybe it's not. Maybe it's just as you get, maybe the rock songs are harder to sing. Maybe you've got new bandmates and therefore they have a different style. Like you don't really know. And it may not be the same reason for all of them. Why, Darius Rucker did move to country might not be the same reason Lit moved to country.
Hootie and the Blowfish was darn near country adjacent from the beginning.
They were. So it wasn't a big stretch there.
Yeah.
And my guess is he probably didn't lose a lot of fans making that move because it was, back then, when you watch CMT, there were a lot of country, because I worked at a country music radio station in around 2000. I don't know if we brought that up on the podcast. I'm sure we have, but there were a lot of songs that were really popular that I obviously find catchy when you hear over and over again every day. That it's like this is a country song, but it's also a pop song. Like it's a pop song being sung by somebody who's from Tennessee. Like so, you kind of see where there's some similarities there, but. Interesting stuff. Now that our commercial's over, I was stalling there for ads.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yes, we are running ads, and I can see them.
I
on
knew we were, but I didn't know when that was even happening.
So I get a warning on, and this is behind the scenes stuff for those listening to the podcast. But I get a warning on the screen when it's going to happen, and then I can watch it on my phone to see the ad pop up, which means I don't know if that's just because I'm in mod mode or what. But I was filibustering there so we could get to the end of the ad. So you can give us your picks for.
We need some sort of light that shines in the studio or something.
We'll work on that
or something like that.
Like I said, as I mentioned in the open, this is all new territory for us, so there are going to be some adjustments that have to be made. But with that said, it is time to get to your choices in the Power Trio.
Yeah, so for my choices, I tried to stay mostly mainstream, and kind of going back to the topic itself and why I think it helped to kind of expand it beyond original sound to just any sound, is that I realized a lot of the bands I liked, the sound I liked of theirs wasn't even their first sound. It was like their second or third sound.
Yes.
They could go back to the original, but I'd still not totally be satisfied with that. So the first band on my list has had just any number, just crazy amount of sounds, and that's the band AFI.
Yeah.
Their sound has been changing pretty much every few albums. Early on in their career, they were more of a hardcore punk band for albums like Answer That and Stay Fashionable, Very Proud of You, Shut Your Mouth and Open Your Eyes. The era I like best was kind of that next one. It was more the horror punk, kind of bleeding into post-hardcore, where you had albums like Black Sails at Sunset, The Art of Drowning, and then kind of that next phase with Sing the Sorrow. I think, to me, that's when I got into the band. That's what I expect from these guys. They've gone on to just mutate numerous times since. They almost drifted into like indie rock status there in the late 2010s, and now here we are. Their most recent video sounds like new wave music. Like it's just so out of left field, and in a way I respect that because it's just like, well, we already did that kind of music. What do we do next? But I still, Sing the Sorrow and Art of Drowning to me are two of their best albums. I would love to hear more of that.
Yeah, for sure. It's wild to see them change so much.
Yeah. Number 2 is kind of my obscure one. It's a Finnish power metal band, Twilightning. I think I've probably mentioned them before, probably in the vault. But they're a power metal band that lasted for 3 albums. They had 2 really good power metal albums, Delirium Veil and Plague House Puppet Show. Then in 2007, they released a more stripped-down hard rock album, Swine Lords, which is also good. But man, like if you check out Delirium Veil and Plague House Puppet Show, to me, that's like just perfect power metal, and it's a shame they walked away from that. I think their keyboardist had left the band prior to that, which probably influenced that. And then sadly, they just decided it wasn't worth continuing, and they went away after that. But yeah, those albums were outstanding.
Yeah, it was really good stuff.
Number 3, another mainstream act, and probably not surprising given we've talked about them on the podcast before, Queensryche.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously.
I like their early sound for sure. I like most of their. They've always been a good band. I haven't been super into that last album they did with Jeff Tate, dedicated to Chaos. That wasn't really my thing, but considering how long they had been around at that point, the fact they were still mostly releasing music I enjoyed is something. But man, Operation Mindcrime and Empire, as far as they don't even sound necessarily the same, but the sounds that they were creating at that point in time trump everything else they've done. Like the guitar tones on Mindcrime and just the songwriting on Empire. Give me either one of those.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. That was definitely my favorite era of Queensryche. But yeah, all really interesting picks, and the Twilight one is a good kind of off the beaten path. If you're not familiar with that, if maybe you're new to the podcast, you should go check those albums out. They're really, really good. And if you're a fan of power metal, they should be in your collection. Pick them up if you can. That's always another issue, trying to find some of those albums out there. I have 3 picks as well. The first one to me is a hot take. This is a hot take that me from 1995 would have probably been insulted by this choice. The band is Chicago, and the era is their early stuff. The stuff that came in the 60s and 70s before they had the hit songs of the 80s. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the hit songs of the 80s. But to me, what made Chicago unique was the horns. It was just the bombast. It was just the over-the-top sound. It was such a full experience. And when you go back to the Chicago Transit Authority album, which was my first ever vault pick when we started that gimmick of the year-by-year thing, it just was totally different. And the other thing I liked about those early albums, because I've been listening to them quite a bit lately, is you had all the different lead singers. Like, not every song sounded the same, I think that gave it just a totally different sound to me. And again, I love the Peter Cetera hit era of the 80s. I love those songs. And that's why me of 1995 would have been insulted, because I took a road trip with a guy to do a basketball game in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I had Chicago's greatest hits, and I was singing along to all the new stuff, and he was singing along to all the old stuff. If Jay Hart's still out there somewhere, Jay, I've come around to your side of the fence on that. I love the old stuff as well, too. But that's my hot take, one of the 3. I would love Chicago's sound, that early sound, to be the kind of their sound. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I just wonder, could there have been a way for them to not pivot so hard?
That's a great question.
Could you have had still a very horn-centric sound that also was concerned with mainstream soft rock or rock hits? I just think it was such a departure.
It was like everybody else was doing synth, so they needed to do synth. So they basically took the horns out or reduced them and replaced them with that synth sound. And songs like "Along Comes a Woman" and all. Great song. Again, love that era. Love it. That's why this is such a hot take.
What is the song? And I feel bad that I don't remember, that had kind of the second part at the end with all the horns.
Oh, Hard to Say I'm Sorry, Get Away.
Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to throw these horns in there because these guys are griping that they're not getting to play. So, and of course, if you listen to that song on the radio, that part of the song is never on the radio. Yeah. It cuts off at the end of Hard to Say I'm Sorry. But Get Away, the end of that is awesome. Love it. So, Chicago, number 1. Other 2, not nearly as hot take-ish. Foo Fighters, to me, their album that they recorded in Dave's house, The Wasting Light, to me was just such a To me, it was a pinnacle of their sound. Now, they had bigger hits. There were not huge hits off of this album. But to me, it kind of was what made Foo Fighters so great. You bring people, bring those where they brought Pat Smear back in. They did all of it, recorded it all on tape. To me, it was just a very raw sound that was kind of missing from the music industry that had become so polished. And it really allowed each one of the guys in the band to kind of show off what they could do. And I would have loved to have them do a bunch of albums that way. Didn't work out, and obviously not going to now. But I love that album. It's still my favorite Foo Fighters album. But I would love to have seen more of that kind of sound. I wish more bands would do that, to be completely honest with you. These tools we have are great, but record something on tape and put it together. The last one is probably an easy one. As much as this is kind of the opposite of the Chicago answer. This is Genesis, but it's the Phil Collins era. Obviously, the Peter Gabriel stuff is great. It's totally different. It's really trippy. But man, you can't beat the hits they had in the Phil Collins era for mainstream stuff, and even some of the stuff that wasn't like mega hits were big songs. And then you think of a song like Land of Confusion, how that's just a classic song, and just the sound was obviously a little more rock centric than whatever that was in the 70s that they were doing. But that is my take on Genesis.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I did have one honorable mention.
Yeah.
Just real quick, Shotgun Messiah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Their sound on Second Coming was, as far as like early 90s hard rock, one of the best albums of that period. But to your picks, again, you can't really fault someone for having a preference one way or the other for either Chicago or Genesis, honestly. Foo Fighters, that album is great. I also really like the previous album, Echo, Silence, Patience, and
great
Grace.
album, too.
Long Road to Ruin, probably my favorite Foo Fighters song.
Yeah. I mean, they've got some great stuff in there for sure. And there's all kinds of stuff. We want to know what your opinions are. Join our Discord.
Chris's opinion is.
Chris, you got any thoughts on either Mike or my picks there?
I'm totally down with the Phil Collins Genesis picks.
That's cool.
No. Anything to add, I would say we've talked about kind of some experimentation that's gone on. And in that same vein, I feel like there's some bands where it was better off that they did nothing but experiment the way they did.
Yeah.
I'd say like the big outlier I made note of was David Bowie.
Yeah.
I mean, how many different sounds did that dude have while he was here with us? So, I mean, it does have its perks. There are bands that do it right, but sometimes you just play with it a little bit too much.
For sure. And obviously you think of a band like Rush, who none of us mentioned, but that's a band that was constantly trying to do new things, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't, and they weren't afraid to admit that they didn't work and kind of backpedal from that, but constantly tinkering with their sound as they went forward. And if you talk to diehard Rush fans, there's probably an album or two that would qualify for this list that they like better than the other ones.
But I bet none of them would say they want Rush to go back to their first album.
No, probably not. Maybe somebody is. If there's somebody out there listening to our podcast that would want Rush to go back to the very beginning, then leave a comment on our Discord. We have it linked in both the chats. But a very lengthy episode tonight, but a good one, I think, overall, as we're still figuring out all this new technology. But having said all that, it is time to bring this episode to a close of the Hard Rock Empire. Episode number 82 of the Hard Rock Empire. Episode number 185 of the Nerdcast Empire. Closing in on 200 episodes of the Nerdcast Empire. And this is kind of a new era for us as we've reached affiliate status on Twitch, and we can't thank you all enough for that. Big thanks to Chris for joining us via the magic of technology that we got to work, which was an awesome thing.
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, we got there. It took us a while, but we got there. Big thanks to Mike for putting all this together. A big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. We'll be back next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, or it could be a little later. Stay tuned. Got tournament draw next Sunday, so we may be a little late next week, or we may move it around. Stay tuned. Join the Discord. You'll know when we're going to be on, but otherwise, join us next week for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. For the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.